Shepard Fairey is a controversial figure, and considering that he's been involved in graffiti and street art for almost 4 decades, it's not surprising that he's controversial amongst the general public. But Shepard Fairey might be even more controversial amongst graph writers. And during the last couple of years of being back into graph, I've heard a lot of criticism about Shepard Fairey and a lot of insinuations about him as well. And considering that I lived in San Francisco in the late 90s, I lived in a place where a lot of his work was on display. And this is what I remember of seeing his work, seeing him up and hearing people talk about him in the late 90s and early 2000s. Given that Shepard Fairey got his start in the late 80s, he was already up and he was already in circulation by the time I got my start in 96. But myself and Shepard Fairey were not living in the same location at this time. As I stated, I was living in San Francisco, and I believe at this same time, Shepard Fairey was living down in San Diego. And I can say San Diego and San Francisco look kind of close on a map, but they're not close to each other. Culturally, they're damn near a world apart. But this is like an hour-and-a-half plane ride, and it's a multi-hour drive. And getting yourself from one place to the other and getting up is commendable. But his work in San Francisco didn't initially jump out to me. Obviously, there was a whole lot going on in the city at that time, and I wouldn't have much of a channel if there wasn't. And given all the different legends, people that you guys have heard about like Twist, Orphan, and Reminisce, as well as a lot of the other people in the mix that you guys aren't as familiar with, there was a lot of tags and a lot of work to keep track of. And when I first got my introduction to graffiti, I was mostly focused on the work of bus hoppers, people like myself, people that were going out there and crushing buses, but later on, I got more so into the works of people that were hitting pieces. And at that time, Shepard Fairey was doing neither. Most of his work, if not all of his work, was printed media. And more particularly, it was his slaps, it was his stickers that I first saw. These stickers had a very familiar face to me on them, and this face was Andre the Giant. As a kid that grew up in a working class household, in a working class neighborhood in the 80s and 90s, it was gonna be damn near impossible for me not to be into wrestling. At that time, wrestling was going through something of a golden age. And while Andre the Giant wasn't one of my favorite wrestlers, it was impossible to miss somebody that was like 7'4" and 500 pounds. And the first stickers that I saw from Shepard Fairey had Andre on them, they had his height, they had his weight, and they also had a bit of text that said, Andre the Giant has a posse. And when I read that bit of text, I wondered, what the does that mean? To this day, still don't really know. And I don't know if Andre the Giant really had a posse. I don't know if a fool that was that big really needed a posse. And maybe you needed a posse if you're gonna try to step to him. But there's something out there called the Baader-Meinhof effect. And the Baader-Meinhof effect is when you first encounter something, when you first see it for the first time or hear about it for the first time, you recognize it, but then you start seeing or hearing about it all over the place. And that's how it was for me with these stickers. As soon as I noticed them, I started seeing them all over the city. Over time, I saw more and more styles of these stickers, and they got simplified down to just having Andre the Giant's face on them with the simple word of obey or obey giant. But in addition to the stickers, I also saw a lot of wheat paste posters. And wheat paste posters seem to be a forgotten element of graffiti. I never see people really talk about them. I don't ever see people actually put them up anymore, but in the 90s in San Francisco, they were a big part of the scene. And all the elite artists at that time had wheat paste posters running. But putting these things together was not easy. One, somebody had to design them. And considering that we were graffiti artists, the person that was gonna design them was the person that was gonna put them up. And if you didn't have a hookup at a print shop, if you didn't work at a print shop or had a friend at one, you had to come out of pocket for this, and it wasn't cheap. In terms of the wheat paste solution itself, it didn't seem all that hard to make, and putting these things up was incredibly easy. All you needed was the wheat paste itself, you needed a bucket to put it in, you needed something to spread that stuff around, and you needed the posters. And all during the time that I wrote, my mom worked for DPW, which was the entity responsible for buffing graph. And she said that these things were an absolute nightmare to deal with, and getting them off the side of a building was damn near impossible. It was made further impossible if you put the thing all the way up on the side of the building, and many people did, and you'd see these things running sometimes 20 or 30 feet up on the side of buildings. And accordingly, wheat paste posters were the type of graph I saw running the longest in the city. And as far as how we ourselves looked at these posters, we looked at them as graph. Like I said, some of the best writers in the city, some of the most legendary writers in the city's history were using them. And considering how long they ran for, some of the artists using them, and some of the messages that were included that were anti-corporate and anti-consumerism, a lot of us, myself included, supported their use. And with Shepard Fairey's messaging reflecting our values and him running to a great degree, you saw him up a lot, especially in neighborhoods like the Mission District and Soma. We felt like he was one of us. But to be honest, a lot of us, especially a lot of us that were younger and into bus hopping, knew nothing about him and didn't know who he was. And at the same time that his posters and his stickers were running in the city, there was another legendary writer in the mix named Giant that was up a lot as well. And many of us just assumed that Giant and Obey Giant were the same person. I sure as hell did, and considering I didn't know anything about either artist, it's understandable if I conflated the two. And this stayed this way all throughout the time that I was writing, and I only found out that they were different people in 2000. I went out to the UK for the first time in 2000 and kicked it out in London with my mom. And when I was out there, I saw an Obey Giant sticker running on the back of a sign, and I took a picture of it. And when I got back to the States, I hit up the homeboy at Josh D, who at that time was still running his hi-fi art website. And I let him know that I saw Giant running out in London. Josh and Giant would end up collaborating later, and at that point, they might have already known each other. So Josh asked me to send him this picture, and when he saw it, he let me know that Giant and Obey Giant were not the same person. And he also expressed that he felt like what Shepard Fairey was doing was not graffiti. And to be honest with you, hearing this was kind of surprising. I never considered that what Shepard Fairey was doing was anything except graffiti. But at that time, me and Josh were in very different places in our lives and in very different places in the graph scene. By 2000, I wasn't in the scene at all, and by that point, Josh had been around the people doing pieces for years. And there were a lot of opinions that people that did pieces at that time had that I didn't share then and I don't share now. I didn't think that hitting up on buses was inherently toyish, and I didn't see any kind of distinction between street art and graffiti. And all throughout the time that I was writing, and even by that point in the early 2000s, there was no distinction. This distinction between the two would only come into the scene after I was away from it. And hearing some of these sentiments at that time were these early rumblings of this separation between the two. And at that time, if you told me that somebody that was just using wheat paste posters, just using stickers, or hitting up characters like Twist or Reminisce was not a graffiti writer, I'd wonder, why do you feel that way? But in time, it would make sense. And when I started hearing some of these same things coming out of people's mouths 2 decades later, I remembered hearing it from the homeboy Josh first. And in this present moment, it's easy to say that a lot of people in graph do not consider Shepard Fairey one of us any longer. But even with observing these rumblings and hearing about him a couple of decades ago, when I got back into graffiti a few years ago, I was pretty shocked to hear some of the commentary around Shepard Fairey and street artists. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Chief among them are issues around plagiarism, are issues around appropriation and cooperating with corporate interests and the government. And if you guys want me to do a video about why people don't like Shepard Fairey in 2025, I guess I could do that. But to be honest with you, there's a better way to go about this. There was a writer that was very up in San Francisco in the early 2000s after I was done tagging. But his presence and his memory has been completely erased. And because this dude was exiled and he was removed from the scene, I'm not even gonna say his name. And considering what he got exiled for, I support how he was treated. And if you're a graffiti writer that's cooperating with corporate interests, with the entities responsible for gentrification and oppression of poor and working class people, understand you might get exiled too. And if there is some level of regulation that's needed in our community, I say we should be the ones to regulate it. And we can harness the power of what we do, our creative spirit, our creative output for us and what we want and what we stand for. And if somebody's gonna take all that we put out as creative people and utilize it for a paycheck for themselves, I'm not with it. But there's also gonna be people that'll say that there's an unfair treatment towards Shepard Fairey and other street artists of his ilk. But back in the day, in the 90s, when Shepard was at his peak and putting up a lot of work in San Francisco and a bunch of other places, all of these questions were not in the mix. But at the end of the day, people can start in one place and end up in a completely different one. Ultimately, that's the goal of pursuing something creative. But personally, anywhere I'm going, I'm taking you guys with me. And in coming back to this thing I love and fully embracing it, there's no way in hell I'm turning my back on it again. And there's even less of a chance I do so for a paycheck.